The winds of Montana had a way of teaching patience. They rolled endlessly across the open plains, bending the wheat until it whispered like an ocean, and turning even the simplest shot with a rifle into a puzzle of calculation and instinct. For Sophia, those winds were her first teachers, long before she ever put on a uniform or touched the sleek steel of a Barrett MRAD. Her father, Daniel Hael, was the one who first placed a rifle in her hands. A tall man with weathered skin and eyes the color of worn steel, he had grown up as a rancher and hunter, teaching himself to survive in the unforgiving landscapes of the West. When Sophia was only 12, he took her on her first hunt. She remembered the smell of the grass, the chill of morning, and the weight of the .22 rifle pressing against her small shoulder. "Don't rush it," her father said, crouching beside her as a deer moved cautiously into the clearing. "Breath controls the bullet, not your finger. Remember that." Sophia nodded, though her hands trembled. The world seemed impossibly loud, the rustling of leaves, the thump of her heartbeat, even the scrape of her boot on the soil. She tried to aim, but her finger tightened too quickly. The shot cracked across the clearing, echoing through the trees, but the deer bounded away unharmed. Her disappointment was instant. "I missed," she muttered, lowering the rifle. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You didn't miss. You learned. And that matters more than any kill." It was a lesson that stayed with her for years. Patience was more powerful than frustration. Every failure was just another line in the textbook of experience. By the time Sophia was 16, she was no longer missing. She could hit tin cans balanced on fence posts at 200 yards, then 300, then farther still. While her friends in town cared about dances and dates, Sophia spent her weekends lying prone in the grass, learning to breathe with the land itself. The plains taught her to wait, to feel the shift in wind on her cheek, to measure time, not in seconds, but in heartbeats. Her mother worried. "Sophia, you're out there more than you're in here," she'd say, watching her daughter clean her rifle at the kitchen table. "You're young. You don't want people to think you're..." Strange, Sophia only smiled. Strange doesn't matter when you're good at something. Her mother sighed, but never pressed further. Deep down, she saw the same fire in her daughter's eyes that Daniel carried in his own, the fire of someone who refused to live small. The turning point came during her senior year. A local county fair hosted a shooting competition. Most of the participants were grown men, seasoned hunters with years of experience. When Sophia signed up, laughter rippled through the crowd. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" One man sneered, twirling his cap in his hands. "Targets are a lot smaller than rabbits." Sophia ignored him. She lined up, her rifle steady against her shoulder, and waited for the signal. One by one, the targets popped up at increasing distances. Each crack of her rifle was precise, clean. Tin shattered, metal rang, dust exploded. By the end of the round, she hadn't missed once. The crowd fell silent, stunned into disbelief. The sneering man's smile evaporated, replaced with a begrudging nod. From that day forward, in her small town, Sophia was no longer just Daniel's daughter. She was the girl who never missed. College was never her plan. While her friends filled out applications, Sophia filled out enlistment papers. The military offered what she craved: discipline, challenge, and the chance to push herself beyond even her own limits. When she told her parents, her mother cried, her father only nodded. "You'll go farther than I ever could," Daniel said, pride heavy in his voice. Basic training was grueling, but Sophia thrived. Obstacle courses, tactical drills, long marches where others faltered, she endured. But it was the rifle range where she truly shined. Her instructors couldn't ignore her precision. At distances where recruits struggled to land a single hit, Sophia was punching holes through the bullseye. One afternoon, Sergeant Miller, a gruff veteran with 20 years in uniform, pulled her aside. "You've got a gift," he told her, squinting against the sun. "Ever thought about sniper school?" She hadn't, but the idea took root instantly. Sniper school was something else entirely. It wasn't just about shooting, it was about becoming invisible. Sophia learned to crawl through mud for hours without being seen, to disguise herself in terrain until even trained spotters overlooked her. She learned patience beyond patience, holding her position for days at a time, waiting for the perfect moment. "Don't just look at the target," an instructor reminded her. "Look at the world around it. See the wind in the grass, the shimmer in the air, the way shadows move. The bullet doesn't travel through nothing. It travels through everything." Sophia absorbed every word. She was no longer just shooting rifles. She was learning to bend the environment itself to her will. But sniper school wasn't just technical, it was psychological. They tested mental endurance, isolation, and the ability to make decisions with absolute consequences. Sophia passed each trial with the same quiet determination that had carried her through the Montana plains. When others grew restless, she grew still. When others doubted themselves, she trusted her training. It was here that she first outperformed her peers, so dramatically that whispers began. At a range exercise, the target was placed farther than anyone had expected, an impossible distance, some said. One by one, the cadets missed. When it was her turn, Sophia adjusted, calculated, and pulled the trigger. The target dropped. The instructors exchanged looks, and a few cadets scoffed. "Fluke," one muttered. But when Sophia repeated the shot hitting the target, again silence fell. By the time she graduated, Sophia wasn't just another soldier. She was something rarer, a sniper with a blend of natural talent, unshakable patience, and relentless discipline. She didn't care about the whispers of envy or the occasional scoffs. She cared only for the truth written in every clean shot she took. The making of Sophia was not sudden. It was the sum of quiet mornings on the plains, the patient lessons of her father, the doubts of strangers, the tears of her mother, the brutal tests of the military, and the discipline of sniper school. Piece by piece, each trial sharpened her like steel against stone. And though she didn't yet know it, the path she had walked since childhood was leading her toward a moment that would echo across the world, a single shot from 3 kilometers, a way that would silence every doubt ever spoken against her. When Sophia first laid her eyes on the Barrett MRAD, it wasn't just a rifle, it was a revelation. She had fired dozens of weapons by then, from standard-issue M4 carbines to bolt-action training rifles. They were tools, functional and reliable, but none of them felt like they truly belonged to her. The MRAD, however, spoke a different language. Sleek, modular, and brutally precise, it looked more like a masterpiece of engineering than a simple firearm. It was during an advanced sniper training program at Fort Bragg that the weapon was first introduced. The trainees were gathered under a blistering sun while crates were rolled onto the range. Sergeant Miller, her old mentor, stood in front of them. "Gentlemen and lady," he said, glancing at Sophia with a grin, "meet the Barrett MRAD. This rifle is not just hardware. It's possibility. If you learn to master it, distances that seem impossible today will become routine tomorrow." He opened one of the crates, and inside lay the rifle. Matte black, sharp lines, a bolt-action system that glimmered in the light. The barrel stretched long and intimidating, and beside it lay interchangeable bolts and barrels. "This," Miller continued, lifting the rifle with a reverence most men reserve for holy objects, "is designed to do what other rifles cannot. Its modular change the caliber, change the mission. It's accurate well beyond 2,000 meters. And in the right hands." He let his words linger, letting their imaginations fill the silence. Sophia stepped forward when her name was called. The MRAD was placed into her hands, and immediately something clicked. The weight was heavy but balanced, the ergonomics smooth against her grip. She pressed the stock into her shoulder and peered through the scope, the crosshairs stretching across the far hills. It didn't feel foreign, it felt inevitable, as if her years of training had been building to this very moment. The first time she fired the MRAD, the recoil punched against her shoulder like a hammer. The .338 Norma Magnum round thundered downrange, a supersonic scream cutting across the valley. Dust kicked up hundreds of yards away, and the steel target rang with a sharp clang. The instructors nodded. Unimpressed, they expected nothing less. But Sophia didn't care about their reactions. What struck her was the way the rifle responded to her, the precision of its mechanics, the way every micro-adjustment mattered. Again, she whispered to herself, chambering another round. For the rest of the afternoon, while others rotated out, Sophia remained. She fired until her body ached and her shoulder bruised, adjusting for wind, for mirage, for distance. She didn't stop when the sun dipped low and the range emptied. It wasn't obsession. It was connection, something she couldn't yet explain, but instinctively understood. Over the following weeks, the MRAD became an extension of her body. She learned to strip it down blindfolded, reassembling it with fingers that moved like clockwork. She memorized its quirks, its tolerances, the way the bolt needed just the right force to glide smoothly. She experimented with calibers, but always returned to the .338 Norma Magnum. Its balance of range and accuracy suited her like a second skin. Her instructors noticed the difference. "She treats that thing like it's alive," one remarked. "Or like it's her partner," another muttered. They weren't wrong. Sophia didn't see the rifle as a machine. She saw it as her ally, her voice, her silent shield. One night, after a grueling day on the range, Sophia sat in her bunk, cleaning the rifle with meticulous care. Her roommate, a fellow trainee named Carter, leaned against the wall watching her. "You're obsessed," he said, half amused, half concerned. "Most of us treat it like gear. You treat it like, I don't know, a religion." Sophia smirked without looking up. "Maybe that's the difference between us." "And what's that supposed to mean?" She finally met his gaze. "Gear breaks. Weapons fail. But if you understand something deeply enough, it doesn't fail you." "Not when it matters," Carter chuckled. "You really believe that rifle won't let you down?" "No," Sophia corrected, setting the bolt back into place with a click. "I believe I won't let it down." The MRAD pushed her beyond what she thought possible. During one exercise, the instructors set up a target at 2,500 meters, a range considered impractical for training. Wind gusted hard across the field, and most trainees couldn't even spot the target through the haze. Sophia adjusted carefully, calculating for bullet drop, humidity, and mirage. She exhaled slowly, steadied her trigger finger, and squeezed. The round cracked across the distance, and a second later, the steel plate echoed with impact. The range officers stared. Few had expected anyone to land that shot, much less on the first attempt. "Lucky," one trainee muttered. But when Sophia repeated the shot, and the target rang again, the murmurs stopped. From then on, she wasn't just another sniper in training. She was the one pushing boundaries, the one treating impossible as just another word. With mastery came challenges. Not everyone celebrated her success. Whispers started, jealous voices, insecure rivals. "She babies that rifle. She spends more time with the MRAD than with people. One day, she'll choke like everyone else." Sophia ignored them. She didn't need their approval. What mattered was what happened when she lay prone on the field, her rifle steady, the world narrowed into crosshairs. There, no voices mattered, only the shot. Months later, On deployment overseas, the MRAD proved itself in combat. Sophia's unit was pinned down by insurgents on a ridge more than 2 kilometers away. Machine gun fire rained down, and the squad's options were limited. "Too far for a clean hit," her spotter muttered. "Not for this," Sophia replied, chambering around. She adjusted, calculating through chaos, her breath steady even as bullets cracked nearby. The shot thundered, echoing across the valley. A distant figure crumpled, the machine gun fire ceasing instantly. The unit scrambled to safety, alive because of a single impossible shot. That night, her commander approached her quietly. "Halle," he said, voice low, "you saved 12 lives today." "Never doubt what that rifle means in your hands." Sophia didn't respond. She only nodded, her fingers resting gently on the MRAD's stock. From then on, the MRAD was not just a rifle. It was legend in her hands. Every mission, every shot, every silence that followed was part of a growing story whispered among her peers. Some called her reckless, others called her gifted, but everyone knew the truth. Sophia Halle and the Barrett MRAD were inseparable. And though she had already accomplished feats most snipers only dreamed of, her story was far from over. Somewhere ahead waited a shot so distant, so unthinkable, that it would either cement her legacy forever or break her completely. She didn't know when or where, but she was ready. The rifle had prepared her, and in her heart she believed, when the moment came, the MRAD would not betray her. Sophia's first deployment was not into glory, but into silence. War wasn't loud gunfights every hour, like the movies suggested. It was waiting. Long stretches of monotony, broken only by sudden violent moments where lives balanced on a trigger pull. For Sophia, that rhythm was perfect. Where others fidgeted, grew restless, or lost focus, she thrived. Patience was her weapon long before the Barrett MRAD. Her unit operated in rugged mountain terrain where visibility stretched for miles. Ambushes were common, enemy scouts blending with the rocks and shadows. It didn't take long before Sophia's presence made the difference between her squad walking into traps or dismantling them from afar. The first time it happened, her team was advancing cautiously along a ridgeline when her spotter whispered, "Possible movement at 9 o'clock." Sophia lowered her scope onto a shadow near the ridge. Most would have dismissed it as just rocks. But she saw the slight shift of cloth against stone, the faint shimmer of metal catching the sun. She didn't hesitate. The MRAD cracked, and the enemy spotter dropped before he could relay the squad's position. "Jesus," one of the soldiers muttered. "She just saved our asses." From then on, they trusted her. Her reputation didn't grow from a single shot, though. It grew from consistency. While others faltered at long range, Sophia delivered again and again. At distances where bullets became whispers, her shots still landed true. Word spread quietly at first. Among soldiers at forward operating bases, stories began circulating. "There's this girl sniper," they'd say. "Hits targets you can't even see without optics." Of course, stories grew in the retelling. By the time they reached distant units, Sophia was painted as almost mythical. Some dismissed her as rumor, others as exaggeration. But then came the competition. Every few months, units organized informal contests to test morale and skills. It wasn't official, but pride was on the line, and reputations were forged there. This time, the challenge was clear. Long-distance accuracy. Each participant had 3 shots at targets progressively farther downrange. The final marker? 2,800 meters. Dozens gathered. Soldiers laughed, bet cigarettes, traded insults. When Sophia's name appeared on the roster, the whispers started again. "She's good, sure," one man scoffed. "But no way she's clearing 2,800. When her turn came, She lay prone, the MRAD cradled into her shoulder like an old friend. The first target, 1,500 meters, fell instantly. The second 2,200 meters fell just as easily. Murmurs rose. Then came the final test. The wind was shifting, the air thick with mirage. Even seasoned shooters missed wide, their rounds scattering harmlessly into the dirt. Sophia took her time. She studied the environment, adjusted her dials, and exhaled. The crack of the shot rolled across the valley. Seconds later, the steel plate rang loud and clear. A stunned silence followed. Someone let out a low whistle. Another muttered, "No way. No way she just did that." She reloaded, calm as stone. And then, almost as an afterthought, she hit the plate again. That night, the whispers turned into a name. The Sniper Queen. Someone called her in jest. But the name stuck, repeated in awe and half-smiles. Within weeks, it became a title said with respect. Combat only reinforced it. During one mission, her unit was ambushed while escorting a convoy. RPG fire erupted from a hillside nearly 2 kilometers away. Chaos consumed the road vehicles, swerving, men shouting. Sophia dropped prone, sliding into position beside her spotter. Through the scope, she locked onto the source. A man reloading an RPG behind cover. The shot was nearly impossible wind slicing across the valley, targets moving erratically. But for Sophia, impossible was just another calculation. She steadied, pulled, and the RPG gunner dropped instantly. The second man grabbed the launcher, but before he could fire, he too fell. The hillside went silent. Her commander approached her afterward, eyes heavy with gratitude. "Halle," he said quietly, "you just saved 30 men." Word of that engagement spread faster than any competition story. Soldiers in the field didn't care about medals or technical scores. They cared about survival. And Sophia was survival embodied. But legend came with friction. Not everyone embraced her rise. Some male snipers resented the attention, muttering that her reputation overshadowed their own years of service. They said she was lucky, or that her pretty face made her memorable. Sophia never rose to the bait. When confronted, she simply answered with her shots. In one memorable range session, a skeptical lieutenant challenged her publicly. "You think you're better than everyone else here?" he demanded, smirking as the group gathered. "I don't think anything," Sophia replied evenly. "But I'll shoot against you if you'd like." They set a challenge, 5 targets, increasing in distance, under timed conditions. The lieutenant missed 2. Sophia hit all 5, faster, cleaner, without a flicker of strain. The group fell silent. The lieutenant turned pale. From that day, no one questioned her openly again. The press eventually caught wind. Journalists embedded with units began hearing the same stories. A young American woman, nicknamed the Sniper Queen, with an uncanny record of long-range precision. Though official reports rarely named her, whispers filtered back home. Some magazines wrote speculative features. The mystery of the Sniper Queen. Online forums debated her existence. Was she real or propaganda? Soldiers who had served with her knew the truth, but they rarely spoke. For them, her legend was theirs to keep. Sophia, meanwhile, ignored it all. Fame didn't interest her. The battlefield didn't care about nicknames. For her, the MRAD and the crosshairs were enough. And yet, there were moments, even she couldn't deny it, when she felt the weight of the name. After one mission, her spotter leaned over and grinned. "You know they're all calling you the Sniper Queen now, right?" Sophia smirked. "Let them call me whatever they want. You don't like it?" She shrugged, reloading her rifle. Names don't mean much. Results do. Still, when she caught herself cleaning her MRAD later that night, the phrase lingered in her mind. Sniper Queen. She wouldn't admit it, but deep down, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Not for the title itself, but for what it represented: the years of training, the discipline, the sacrifices. The name wasn't just hers. It belonged to every moment that brought her here. Sophia's story was no longer confined to bases or competitions. It was spreading across oceans, through rumors, through the quiet admiration of those who owed their lives to her shots. But legends invite challenge. For every soldier who respected her, there were others eager to prove her mortal. Some taunted her openly, daring her to attempt shots they called impossible. They didn't know it yet, but their words would set the stage for the moment that defined her forever. A moment when the sniper queen would take aim not at 2 kilometers, not at 2,800 meters, but at a staggering 3,000, turning myth into undeniable history. Sophia had never asked for attention. The battlefield had given her a reputation, the competitions had reinforced it, and whispers had carried her name across bases. But attention, she learned, was a double-edged blade. For every soldier who respected her, there were others who resented her rise. They couldn't ignore her results. Her shots had saved lives, dismantled ambushes, and pushed the limits of what snipers believed possible. But envy has a way of warping truth. Instead of admiration, some men sharpen their pride into mockery. "Queen of the range," one sergeant sneered as she passed by in the mess hall. "Let's see how royal she is when the wind doesn't cooperate. She's a showpiece," another muttered within earshot. "Good for morale, good for stories. But in a real fight, she'll crack like anyone else." Sophia heard it all. She never reacted. She ate her meals in silence, eyes down on her tray, letting the noise wash over her. Words didn't kill targets. Words didn't save squads pinned under fire. Only results mattered, and results were something she never lacked. Still, some taunts cut sharper than others. There were moments in the barracks, late at night, when the murmurs reached her bunk. "She's good, yeah, but she's not that good. It's hype. Smoke and mirrors. They make her sound like she's superhuman. Last I checked, she bleeds like the rest of us." A few even made it personal. "Sniper queen? More like sniper dream. You boys just like the idea of her. If she looked like Miller, nobody would give a damn." Sophia would lie awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, her jaw tight. She'd never asked to be idolized, but she understood what was happening. To them, her success wasn't just about skill, it was a threat to their pride. And pride, especially among men trained to believe they were the best, was fragile as glass. Her spotter, Corporal Reyes, noticed the weight she carried. He was one of the few who spoke to her plainly, without envy or awe. One night, as they cleaned their gear, he said, "You know why they taunt you, right?" Sophia glanced up. "Because they hate losing." Reyes shook his head. "Not just that. You've done what they can't. And instead of admitting it, they'd rather tell themselves you got lucky, or that you're overrated. Makes them feel better." She smirked faintly. "Then let them keep talking. Every time they doubt me, they just make the next shot sweeter." Reese grinned. "That's why they'll never beat you. You don't fight with words. You fight with results." The taunts didn't stop in training. On missions, rival snipers would test her, whispering jabs through radio chatter. "Hey, Queen, think you can actually hit something at this range? Careful, don't want your mascara to smudge." Sophia ignored them, focusing on her calculations, her breathing, her shot. And when her round landed true, when the target dropped clean, the silence that followed was all the vindication she needed. But every insult left a mark, not on her confidence, but on her resolve. She began to crave a moment, one undeniable shot, so far beyond dispute that no voice could ever twist it away. That moment began to take shape during a briefing for a high-risk mission. The target was a hostile commander notorious for orchestrating ambushes. He was clever, elusive, and always well guarded. Recon placed him at a compound nestled deep in a valley, shielded by distance. The catch? He rarely left cover, and when he did, it was at ranges far beyond what most snipers could touch. "We're looking at over 2,800 meters, the intelligence officer explained, clicking through satellite images. "Possibly closer to 3,000, depending on position," the room murmured. 3,000 meters was a distance whispered about in sniper circles, a theoretical horizon where bullets lost their certainty. "Forget it," one soldier scoffed. "That's fantasy. No one's hitting a shot like that in real conditions." But across the table, Sophia's eyes narrowed. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Reyes, seated beside her, caught the look and smirked. "She's already thinking about it," he muttered under his breath. Later that night, as Sophia checked her MRAD, the whisper started again. "You really think you can make a 3,000-meter shot?" one rival asked, leaning against the doorway of the armory. His tone dripped with sarcasm. Sophia didn't look up. "I don't think. I calculate," he chuckled. "You miss that? You're a joke. All this hype? Gone. You sure you want to gamble the crown?" She slid the bolt into place, the metallic click echoing like punctuation. Then she met his eyes. "I don't gamble. I prepare." The rival smirked, shaking his head as he walked away. "You'll choke." "Everyone does, sooner or later." Sophia's jaw tightened. She whispered to herself, "Not me." The next weeks were a crucible of training. She pushed herself harder than ever, practicing at extreme ranges, studying atmospheric shifts, memorizing ballistic tables. While others slept, she lay prone under starlight, sending rounds downrange at targets nearly invisible to the naked eye. Every miss was catalogued, analyzed, corrected. Every hit built another layer of certainty. She wasn't just training her body or her rifle, she was training her mind to accept the impossible as routine. Reyes watched her with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You know you're driving yourself insane, right?" he said one evening as she adjusted her scope for the 100th time. Sophia didn't glance up. "Insane or prepared? We'll see. You already have nothing to prove. They can talk all they want, but you've done things none of them could dream of." Sophia chambered another round. "That's the problem. Dreams fade. Legends don't." The taunts continued even as the mission approached. Men laughed, bet against her, whispered that the sniper queen was about to fall from her throne. Some mocked her openly in the mess, asking when she'd finally prove herself. Sophia stayed silent. But inside, the fire burned hotter. She wasn't chasing approval anymore. She wasn't chasing glory. She was chasing silence, the kind of silence that follows when doubt dies in an instant. The kind of silence only a perfect shot can create. And somewhere deep in the valley of her mind, she already saw it. The crosshairs settling on a figure 3 kilometers away, her fingers squeezing, the world holding its breath. When that day came, she promised herself there would be no taunts left. Only silence. The morning of the mission broke with a brittle silence. The valley below was a sleeping beast, its slopes wrapped in mist and shadows, the kind that seemed to swallow sound whole. Sophia lay prone on a ridge more than 2 miles away, the Barrett MRAD resting on her bipod like an extension of her own body. The weapon was heavy, yet in her arms it felt weightless, because she knew today it wasn't just a rifle. It was a promise. The target was confirmed. Commander Yaros, a ruthless architect of ambushes that had claimed dozens of American lives. He was bold, but not careless. He kept his distance, never stepping into ranges most rifles could reach. But today, intelligence suggested he would make an appearance overconfident, believing himself untouchable. Her spotter, Corporal Reyes, peered through a spotting scope, his voice low and steady. Distance, 2-9-8-6 meters. Call it 3,000. A number hung in the air like a weight. 3,000 meters. The line between possibility and myth. No American sniper had ever confirmed a kill at that distance in conditions like these. At this range, even a bullet became mortal, fragile against the laws of physics. Reyes adjusted his scope. Winds shifting 2 knots from the west. Elevation drop is insane. You'll need 39 mils of holdover, Sophia breathed out, her cheek pressed against the MRAD's cheek rest. Through her scope, the compound shimmered in the morning heat, mirages bending the edges of reality. At this distance, even spotting a man clearly was a feat. Identifying Yaros among guards and shadows was like threading a needle in a storm. The challenges stacked higher with every calculation. At 3,000 meters, the bullet's flight time stretched past 6 seconds in eternity, where the world could change. The target could step away. The wind could shift. The Earth itself was a factor, its rotation bending trajectories across vast distances, a phenomenon called the Coriolis effect. She ran the math in her head, steady, methodical. Elevation, barometric pressure, humidity, all variables she had trained herself to read like second nature. Her logbook, scribbled full of calculations from endless nights of practice, whispered in her memory. Every shot she had ever taken had prepared her for this. Still, doubt gnawed at the edge of her focus. She heard the voices of her critics, their taunts rising in her mind. No one's hitting that shot. She'd choke. She's just hype. Her grip tightened on the MRAD. Let them talk. I'll answer with silence. Reyes spoke again, voice calm, grounding. You don't have to prove anything, you know. You've already earned the crown. I'm not doing this for them, Sophia murmured, adjusting her scope. I'm doing this because it can be done. He chuckled softly. That's what scares me. You make the impossible sound casual. Sophia didn't smile. Her breathing slowed, each inhale measured, each exhale controlled. The world narrowed to the crosshairs, the target zone, and the silence between heartbeats. Down in the compound, movement stirred. Guards shifted positions, scanning the valley with the complacency of men who thought distance was their shield. Then, among them, a taller figure emerged. Yaros. Reyes' voice dropped. Target confirmed. 2 guards flanking. He's exposed, but not for long. Sophia tracked him, the crosshairs trembling with the faint rhythm of her pulse. 3,000 meters meant any tremor in her body became magnified chaos in the scope. She slowed her breathing further, sinking into the kind of stillness only snipers know, a silence deeper than meditation. The weight of the moment pressed in. Missing wasn't just failure. It was confirmation of every taunt, every sneer, every whispered dismissal. Worse, it would leave Yaros alive to keep orchestrating death. Reyes whispered, wind shift. 1/4 mil correction right. Sophia adjusted, micro movements of her gloved fingers. The world seemed to fade. No birds, no distant hum of insects, no whispers of wind. Just her rifle, and a man 3 kilometers away who had no idea death was watching. She thought of her training nights, firing into darkness, watching bullets vanish into the horizon. She thought of the insults in the mess hall, the smirks, the voices that doubted her resolve. And she thought of silence, the silence she craved more than applause, the silence that only a perfect shot could deliver. Her fingers settled on the trigger. She felt the steel curve, familiar, unyielding. Send it when ready. Reyes breathed. Sophia inhaled, exhaled. The crosshair steadied on Yaros' chest. Time slowed, stretched, and for one crystalline instant, the universe held still. She squeezed. The rifle roared, the recoil slamming into her shoulder. The shot rang across the valley, echoing like thunder rolling off mountains. Through the scope, the bullet began its 6-second journey, invisible, vulnerable, racing against wind, gravity, and time. Every fraction of a second was an eternity. 1 second, the bullet cut through mist, arcing high above the valley floor. 2 seconds. A gust whispered across the ridge, had she accounted enough. 3 seconds. Heat shimmer bent the air, distorting her vision. 4 seconds. Yarrows shifted slightly, turning to address a guard. 5 seconds. Sophia's breath caught, her mind whispering, "Stay still." 6 seconds. Impact. Through the glass, Yarrows staggered, then collapsed, a crimson bloom spreading across his chest. His guards froze, disbelief etched on their faces. Reyes exhaled sharply. "Holy hell. You did it." But Sophia didn't speak. She watched in silence, her heart steady, her expression unreadable. She hadn't come here for cheers. She had come here for this silence, for the moment when doubt itself died. On the ridge, Reyes finally tore his eyes from the scope, grinning like a man who had just seen a myth made real. 3,000 meters. They'll never doubt you again. Sophia's gaze remained on the compound, watching the chaos unfold as guards scrambled. Her voice, when it came, was quiet, steady. They'll try. Doubt never dies. But this shot? This silence? It'll haunt them. She ejected the spent casing, the metallic ring of brass on stone, echoing faintly. For her, it was done. But across bases, barracks, and battlefields, the legend of the Sniper Queen had just been reborn. The valley had gone still, as though the world itself knew a reckoning was coming. Sophia lay on the ridge, her Barrett MRAD nestled into her shoulder, her eye locked onto the crosshairs. Beneath her, the earth seemed to breathe with every exhale. Time had slowed to a crawl, and yet the weight of decision pressed like a mountain on her chest. She inhaled. Her lungs expanded, measured, patient. She exhaled. The crosshairs drifted in rhythm with her pulse. Then, with a stillness born of years, she broke the silence. Her fingers squeezed. The rifle thundered, a single roar that shattered the morning calm. Birds scattered in panic from the trees below, and dust leapt from the rocks around her. But Sophia hardly felt the recoil. Her world narrowed into one thing: the invisible bullet racing through air, a messenger of death, a test of everything she was. 1 second. The bullet screamed from the muzzle, breaking the sound barrier with a whip-like crack. It cut through the cool mountain air, leaving behind only a faint spiral of disturbed atmosphere. Sophia's cheek pressed deeper against the stock, eyes locked on the scope, tracking the blur of heat waves that marked the bullet's path. Her heart beat once, loud in her ears. She thought of all the times she had been told she couldn't, all the nights lying awake hearing men whisper doubts through thin walls. 1 second in, and they're already wrong. 2 seconds. The bullet soared, beginning its long arc downward. Gravity pulled it, but Sophia had planned for this. She had dialed her scope to absurd holdovers, trusted her ballistic charts, trusted her mind. Reyes muttered beside her, barely breathing, trajectory holding. Holding, but Sophia barely heard him. She was inside the math, inside the shot itself. Wind tugged at the projectile, a whisper from the west. She imagined the spin of the bullet, gyroscopic stability, fighting to keep its path true. A bead of sweat slid down her temple, catching on her jaw. She didn't move. 3 seconds. The valley heat shimmered, making the world dance. Through her scope, the compound blurred and warped. Yarrows shifted slightly, turning his head to speak to one of his guards. Sophia's pulse quickened. At this distance, Even the smallest motion threatened disaster. The bullet was still hundreds of meters away, locked in its invisible race. Her critics' voices echoed in her memory. No one can hit that far. Physics won't allow it. She miss. She choke. Her jaw tightened. Not today. 4 seconds. The bullet descended now, curving along its deadly arc. Air density thinned its energy, slowed its speed, made its path fragile. The Coriolis effect, the Earth itself, turning beneath its flight, tugged at it. But Sophia had accounted for that too. Ray's voice was a ghost in her ear. Almost there? Hold, hold. Sophia thought of silence. Not the silence of the valley or the rifle after firing, but the silence she craved, the silence of vindication, the silence of respect unspoken. Every taunt, every sneer, every doubter's smirk, they would all dissolve in that silence. Her heart hammered once, and she pressed her lips together. Stay steady. Stay true. 5 seconds. The bullet closed the distance. Through her scope, Sophia saw Yarrow shift his stance, lifting a hand to gesture at something beyond the wall. Her stomach clenched. If he stepped back into cover, the shot would vanish into dust and stone. Stay still. Her thoughts screamed it, begged it, commanded it. For a fraction of eternity, the commander paused, his body angled just enough, just long enough. Reyes whispered like a prayer. Come on. Come on. 6 seconds. The bullet arrived. Through the glass of her scope, Sophia saw it a sudden jerk, a crimson bloom exploding from Yarrow's chest. His body staggered backward, eyes wide with disbelief, before crumpling to the ground. His guards froze, shock freezing them in place. The shot had landed. Against physics, against doubt, against every taunt she'd ever endured. Sophia had written her answer across 3,000 meters of sky. Reyes exhaled hard, half laugh, half sob. My God, you did it. 3 kilometers. You actually did it. Sophia's finger lifted from the trigger, her breath releasing slowly, almost reverently. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. Instead, she listened. The valley was silent. No jeers, no taunts, no whispers of doubt. Just silence, the silence she had longed for, the silence she had earned. Reyes looked at her, shaking his head in awe. They'll be talking about this shot for decades. Sophia blinked once, still watching the compound unravel into chaos as Yarrow's men scrambled in confusion. Finally, she spoke, her voice quiet, calm, absolute. They won't talk. Not anymore. Reyes frowned, not understanding. She shifted her rifle, ejecting the spent casing. The brass hit stone with a soft, ringing chime. Silence is louder than words. That's what they'll hear. For Sophia, the shot wasn't just a kill. It was a statement carved into the laws of physics themselves. It was the moment she had transcended taunts and whispers. From this day forward, she would no longer be debated. She would be remembered. The Sniper Queen hadn't just silenced a man. She had silenced doubt. The world seemed to hold its breath. For the first moments after the shot, there was only the echo rolling off the valley walls, a thunderous reminder of what had just occurred. Yarrows lay crumpled, and his guards froze in place, wide-eyed and stunned. Even the birds above had gone silent, as though nature itself recognized the gravity of the moment. Sophia remained prone, her cheek resting against the MRAD, her fingers cold but steady. She didn't move. She didn't celebrate. She had learned long ago that victory isn't found in cheers or applause, it's found in results, in the quiet that follows when doubt dies. Beside her, Ray's breath finally caught up to him. His voice trembled as he whispered, I can't believe it. 3,000 meters, that's That's impossible. Not impossible, Sophia replied softly, her voice calm as if she were correcting a simple misunderstanding. Just calculated. Below them, the enemy forces reacted in shock. Soldiers scrambled, unsure whether the figure crumpling on the ground was a trap, a mirage, or an act of some supernatural precision. The commander was gone, and with him, the cohesion of their units shattered. Radios crackled with confusion, men barking orders that came too late. 3,000 meters is a distance that makes even the most experienced soldiers question reality, and they were witnessing it firsthand. Some of the guards froze entirely, staring at Yaros as if trying to will him back to life. Others dove for cover, seeking a source that could strike from impossibly far away. And yet, all of them were invisible to Sophia and her spotter, who remained perfectly concealed atop the ridge. Reyes shook his head in disbelief. They'll write stories about this. They'll call it luck, impossible conditions, maybe even a miracle. Sophia slowly scanned the valley through her scope, observing the chaos. She exhaled. Luck has nothing to do with it. Precision, patience, and preparation. That's what makes shots like this possible. The valley fell silent again, only the faint murmur of wind over the ridges breaking the stillness. That silence was deafening, heavier than applause, more satisfying than any recognition. In that quiet, Sophia could hear the culmination of every hour spent training in darkness, every calculation made in the wee hours, every taunt endured in the mess hall. All of it had led to this single moment. Back at the base, word of the shot traveled like wildfire. At first, it seemed impossible. A sniper hitting a target at 3,000 meters? The claims were met with skepticism. Some officers shook their heads, thinking it exaggerated. Yet soon, satellite data, battle cameras, and eyewitness accounts confirmed the impossible. News spread quietly at first, whispered in hushed tones by soldiers returning from the field. The ones who had witnessed it firsthand carried awe and disbelief in their eyes. The term Sniper Queen ceased to be a nickname and became an undeniable title. No one questioned it anymore. Sophia's fellow soldiers approached her in small groups, hesitant at first, then with growing respect. They didn't ask about her technique or calculations they already knew. They only nodded, silently acknowledging the woman who had done what no one else could. Unreal, muttered one, a young recruit barely out of training. I've never seen anything like it. Nor I, said another, older and battle-hardened. She's something else. And somewhere deep in her chest, Sophia allowed herself a small measure of satisfaction. Not for recognition, not for titles, but for the undeniable silence that followed her shot. Her rivals, however, reacted differently. Men who had mocked her openly, betting against her, sneering in the mess hall, they were forced into sudden, uneasy humility. One of the loudest critics, a veteran sniper named Callahan, approached her later, his jaw tight, eyes avoiding hers. You actually did it, he muttered, voice low. 3,000 meters. I thought it was a joke. I underestimated you. Sophia didn't rise to his tone. She simply reloaded her MRAD with calm precision. Numbers don't lie. The shot doesn't care who believes it's possible. Callahan didn't argue further. He nodded stiffly, acknowledging what he couldn't dispute. Across the ridge, the valley still hummed with confusion. Enemy reinforcements began to mobilize, but the morale shock was already evident. 3,000 meters is a distance at which panic becomes unavoidable, because it removes the sense of security. If death could come from that far, every shadow became a threat, every ridge line suspicious. The mere knowledge that someone could strike from such a distance changed the psychology of the battlefield. Sophia observed silently, calculating the movements, predicting the next steps. Every instinct honed through years of training told her the enemy would scatter, regroup, and falter, and they did. What she had done wasn't just a kill. It was a demonstration of tactical dominance. Her spotter, still in awe, finally allowed himself to laugh softly. "You didn't just hit him. You broke them." Sophia exhaled, feeling the tension in her body finally ease. She hadn't set out to break morale or prove anything, yet results had a way of speaking louder than intention. Later, in the aftermath, her commanding officer approached. The man was stern, his face carved with years of discipline, but his eyes betrayed an unspoken admiration. "Halle," he said, voice low but resonant, "I've seen a lot in my career, but what you just did, it's extraordinary. 3,000 meters. No one else has come close." Sophia nodded, carefully avoiding the words, "Thank you." Recognition wasn't her goal. Precision, patience, and preparation had been. And in those terms, she had succeeded. "The men are talking," the officer continued. "They respect you. Even your rivals. They understand now." She allowed herself a small smile. Not for them, but for herself. Every moment of struggle, every sleepless night, every doubt she had endured, had led to this point. By the time the valley quieted, her legend had already begun to spread. Radios buzzed with incredulity. Soldiers told their friends. Commanders relayed the story up the chain of command. Soon, whispers became conversations, conversations became reports, and reports became a name repeated across bases. Sophia Halle, Sniper Queen. And yet, Sophia remained unchanged. She cleaned her MRAD carefully, checked every component, every bolt, every adjustment. She knew the legend belonged to everyone who had trained, calculated, and endured before her, but the silence, the precision, the impossible shot belonged to her alone. At night, as the sun sank behind the ridges and painted the valley in gold and shadow, Sophia sat quietly, staring at the distant compound. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, not to fire, but in reverence for the tool that had carried her to this moment. Reyes sat beside her, quietly shaking his head. "Do you know what you just did? People will study this shot for years." Sophia glanced at him, her expression serene. "I don't care if they study it. They'll remember it. And that's enough." The silence returned, heavy, absolute, and finally complete. Across the battlefield, doubt had been silenced. For the first time in her career, Sophia could simply breathe, knowing that her results had spoken louder than any words ever could. And as the night descended, one thought lingered in her mind. Every taunt, every doubt, every sneer had led to this moment. Every insult had been transformed into preparation. And the Sniper Queen, true to her name, had delivered her answer in the purest form. Silence. The valley had fallen silent, but the ripple of Sophia Hale's impossible shot spread far beyond the mountains. News traveled faster than any soldier could march, crossing borders and channels, whispered in mess halls, repeated in briefings, and eventually reaching the ears of commanders thousands of miles away. Sophia, lying prone with her Barrett MRAD, had accomplished something that seemed supernatural to those who hadn't witnessed it firsthand. 3,000 meters, a distance that had been theoretical, a feat that had belonged to myths and dreams, had now been realized. And yet, for her, there was no pride in headlines or accolades. She measured success by precision, preparation, and impact, and in that moment, she had achieved all three. Back at base, the reaction was immediate. Soldiers and officers alike moved with awe when her name came up. Even those who had once mocked her found themselves speaking quietly, reverently. "The Sniper Queen," they said, and the title was no longer a nickname or rumor. It was fact. Sophia moved through the base with the same calm she always had. She didn't seek attention. She didn't bask in praise. Yet wherever she went, soldiers turned to her for advice, for training, for inspiration. Young recruits would stare, wide-eyed, at the woman who had silenced doubt itself. One evening, a group of new snipers approached her after dinner, hesitant but eager. "Ma'am," one whispered, voice trembling, How do you even do it? The 3,000-meter shot?" Sophia looked at them quietly, letting the silence linger a moment longer than necessary. Discipline, patience, calculations you trust more than instinct, and understanding that every shot has consequences, both seen and unseen. Nothing else matters. The recruits nodded, absorbing every word as if it were scripture. Her story began to circulate beyond the base. Journalists embedded with units filed reports, cautious at first, then increasingly fascinated. Rumors became headlines. American sniper achieves unprecedented long-range kill. The Sniper Queen? Legend or reality? 3,000 meters of silence. Readers across the country debated, admired, and in some corners, disbelieved. But photos, satellite confirmation, and witness testimony left no doubt. Sophia Hawa had changed the definition of what a sniper could accomplish. Military analysts studied her shot for months, calculating ballistics, wind effects, and her methodology. Textbooks would eventually reference her as an example of technical mastery, precision, and calm under extreme pressure. Universities and military academies alike would dissect the 6-second journey of that bullet for years. Yet Sophia herself remained grounded. Fame had never been her aim. She cleaned her rifle with meticulous care, checked the bolts, the barrel, the stock, and adjusted the scope as she always had. Every action was deliberate. She didn't need applause. She needed accuracy, preparation, and silence. Her mentors, those who had trained her through grueling nights and relentless drills, watched quietly. Sergeant Miller, who had first introduced her to the MRAD, simply nodded when he learned of the shot. "I knew she'd do it," he said softly, pride shining in his eyes. "I just didn't think anyone else would believe it." The taunts that had once gnawed at her, the rivalries that had fueled her determination, they faded into memory. Callahan, the sniper who had mocked her publicly, now offered a grudging respect. "You earned it," he said one night during a training rotation. "I'll never doubt you again." Sophia didn't respond with pride or arrogance. She only nodded. "Doubt is part of growth," she said quietly. "Let it teach you, not define you." Even her spotter Reyes marveled at her calm. "You changed everything," he said. "Not just with that shot, but with how people see the impossible." Sophia looked out over the ridges, where the morning mist still lingered in the valleys below. "Impossible doesn't exist," she murmured. "It's just a matter of preparation, calculation, and courage." In the months that followed, Sophia's story became a legend. Soldiers recounted it around campfires, whispering about the woman who could hit targets 3 kilometers away. New recruits studied her methods, hoping to replicate her precision. Fellow snipers sought her counsel, striving to understand how one individual could achieve what the world deemed unthinkable. Her influence extended beyond training. The military began incorporating lessons learned from her methods into advanced sniper programs. Ballistic calculators, range estimations, wind analysis, and micro-adjustments were taught using her techniques as benchmarks. The Sniper Queen had not just proven a point, she had reshaped doctrine. Yet for Sophia, it was never about recognition. One night, as she sat alone on a ridge overlooking the valley where the shot had been fired, she cleaned her MRAD and reflected on the journey. From her first day with the rifle, through endless nights of practice, through taunts and doubts, she had built a relationship with precision itself. She thought of every mentor, every drill, every shot that had taught her patience. And she understood something profound. Greatness isn't born from acclaim. It is forged in silence, in discipline, and in moments where doubt is louder than belief. Her legacy, she realized, would not be measured in headlines or social media. It would be measured in the men and women inspired to push beyond their limits, in every sniper who calculated the impossible and trusted themselves to see it through. It would live in the silence after the shot, the quiet acknowledgement that precision and preparation conquer fear and uncertainty. And in that understanding, she felt complete. Years later, when young snipers would speak of her, they wouldn't speak of the 3,000-meter shot alone. They would speak of her patience under pressure, her calm in chaos, her relentless commitment to mastery. They would speak of a woman who had endured taunts and doubt, transformed them into preparation, and delivered a moment that would echo through history. She had earned a title that no one could strip away, the Sniper Queen. And in every quiet valley, across every training ground, the legacy of Sophia Hale would endure. Because some moments aren't about applause. They're about silence. And in that silence, legends are born.